What it bees like, everybody. This is Body by Loud Vent, and you're listening to Loud Talk from the Get Right Spot. First of all, I want to apologize for not having a podcast out this week so far. I'm a little behind, trying to be consistent. But I've been dwelling, on what I should say in this podcast. And it seems I still need to build on what I presented in the last podcast, which was, I called it the primary premise of Body by Loud and the Get Right movement. The primary premise, if you missed that episode, I presented as the what I call the truth that God, the universal supreme creative force, is thought. Now, when I say that, I don't mean it's just thought. It's all things. But what's important about that aspect, out of the major aspects of the universal supreme creative force, the importance of that aspect is what I want to go into today. Now, there are several aspects that Troward teaches that are major aspects of God. These things are what we call truths about God. Now, they are truths about God. There's nothing in the universe that doesn't speak to what God is, because God makes the universe out of itself. Now, that's one of them ideas that most people don't bring up, but that's the most important aspect of God when it comes to our relationship. No one teaches this in school, from what I understand. No one teaches that the universe is made of one creative force. That creative force is behind all the activity that we call subatomic. Now, we've learned that particles and matter do not tend to move unless they're acted upon. So this implicitly means that everything is supported by the force that activates, regulates, sustains, maintains, and basically controls subatomic activity. There's nothing that we can think of that is not made in, through, and by this subatomic activity. So if this subatomic activity and the force that's behind it is doing whatever it does to bring about our existence, we exist because this force exists. That being the case, that means we need to know more about this force and see how this affects our existence. Our existence is built into this force. Now, I used to do debates and get into it with people on Facebook about the existence of God, and everybody, it's the debate is, I'm done with it, because when I try to tell people, where God is at, it's like they don't want to listen. It's okay. If you made the molecules that have all this activity. I mean, I don't even know why scientists don't get it. You made the molecules and subatomic particles that have all this activity going on just to make you exist. What do you think that is? I mean, at least contemplate on describing the importance of what it is. Most scientists won't even talk about, the importance. Okay, you're saying, these forces are doing things. Okay, if a force does something, say gravity, let's go for gravity. If gravity is doing what you know, we describe gravity as doing for us, like making all the bonds and whatnot that molecules and whatnot do to express and make everything, then you have to say that gravity has some intelligence behind it. If gravity has some intelligence behind it, then you either saying gravity is intelligent, or whatever is prescribed to gravity as the working part of gravity is backed by some intelligence. And also, this was one little idea that came in. What would make two particles, no matter how small they are or whatever they are, combine to make a bond if they are the same element? So if we have oxygen, what would make oxygen bind with another part of oxygen to create the molecule that becomes whatever the molecule is called? I think it's dioxide or something like that. I don't know. Well, anyway, what would make two oxygen particles join to do something? Now you could say gravity, but why would gravity make two oxygen particles join? Have this union and bond to each other. They're the same substance. The only thing that can do that is whatever is controlling oxygen on that level. What would make any of the particles be separate if something wasn't keeping them from being separate? Like everything has to be made of one substance and be under control of that substance. That substance is the universal supreme creative force. This is what I've learned. This is what I'm willing to discuss with anybody who's thinking about it. Like, I know I'm not a scientist, but I'm a common sense person. I think, common sense wise about life. And that what makes me the type of metaphysicist that I am. I think. I got into thinking at a very young age. Like I was like 5 or 6. And I think this is what caused me to be a deeper thinker than a lot of my friends. My dad was a Vietnam vet, and he had just got out of service and was dealing with all the trauma of being in the war. He was three tours of Vietnam, and he was pretty, I would say he was pretty messed up when he got out. Even at 5, I could tell, but he was a strict disciplinarian. And I have 3 brothers at the time, and having 3 brothers, we were always, I was the second born, so that made me a middle child. So, middle children, I guess, always strive and try to get some attention. I'm trying to get my dad's attention just to show him I could do something. And I decided, I'm sure I could stand on my head, but my ass decides to do it in the dirt. And being little country boys living basically in the woods up this long dirt road in the woods of South Carolina, we were always playing in the woods. And I don't know if people know about it, you get a lot of parasites playing in the woods, sitting on the ground, laying on the ground. And I guess my dad was tired of us always even having red bugs. If you don't know what red bugs is, ask an older person who grew up in the country, played in the woods. Red bugs were these insects that would get in your nutsacks and would itch like hell. I mean, like you scratch the skin off your nuts because of these damn red bugs. Well, anyway, we had a great aunt, my grandma's sister, who had this technique for getting them out of our nuts. I guess using tweezers or something. She'd squeeze them out or whatever. But man, that's excruciating. So some people out there know what I'm talking about. Damn red bugs, motherfucker. Well, anyway, we were getting ringworms. We were playing on the houses, playing in the woods, always sitting, So ringworms was always, just doing stuff, being country all the time. And I did the headstand and to impress him, and he reared back and knocked me for a damn loop. I mean, flipped me back. I got more dirt in my head from the slap than I got from dude trying to show him I could do a headstand, because he was just pissed off or something. I don't know. He was Vietnam will fuck a motherfucker up. I tell you that. Any kind of war. So after I got that knock upside the head, I can remember being more conscious about thinking about what I did. I didn't want to get that again, so I thought more, and I was more into my thinking at that point. From then on, like, I think before I fucking do, because I don't want to get knocked upside the head. So that made me think about things. It made me think about also him in a different way. Like, I realized I can question you in my mind. Like, I could say, well, it was cool for you to knock me like that. Excuse me. Don't get me wrong, I love my father. He's passed away now, and he was the greatest dad I could ever have. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my journey with him, because he made me think. My consciousness was my thought level became deeper because of that, and I'm thankful for that to this day. I love him. He's a great dude. But he became a minister, and this is where it gets deeper, why I'm more into metaphysics. He became a minister, an AME preacher, and when I went to middle school, I started, had to take these courses that, back then they had courses in the early 80s designed to, help you learn some life skills. And one of the life skill courses, besides, they had shop, they had band, they had wood shop, and they also had typing. Well, I started typing around about the time, I started learning to type around about the time my dad got his own church and was needing his sermons typed out. He'd rather have them typed out than to try to read his handwriting during the sermon. So I was the first to take typing. So he made sure he got a typewriter, and I became his typist. I would type all his sermons out. And in doing so, I had to read them, And because I was a more of a thinker, I tried to make sense out of them as I was reading them. And because how they were, how him and other ministers I had to listen to before he became we used to go to church before he became a minister. And I used to have to listen to the other preachers preach. And they were not, in my estimation, making it make sense. Like, you're going to preach about Genesis and all this important stuff in the Bible. It's so important. We meet in here every week so you to drop some knowledge on us about what happened in this book thousands of years ago. And you still up there telling people Adam and Eve was in this garden and ate a fruit, and it has a major effect on our existence to this day. Okay, so you telling everybody this, but you ain't advanced in no kind of way in making it make sense. And because of that, I'm typing this sermon. He doing the same thing the other preachers are doing. Preaching about what the Bible say without interpreting it in a way that makes sense. So I had to type his sermons, but I tapped out on the whole thing far as like believing what they were talking about. I couldn't believe that God would put such high stakes on what happened so long ago to two people, supposedly. Like, these two people have made some mistake, and because of that, we have this heavy burden over us. Because, back then they was fire and brimstone preachers mostly, They want to tell you how, you ain't got but one way to save yourself. But this dude that came way after these other people, it's the only way that can save yourself from eternal damnation, because, the wrong fruit was ate, and it didn't make any sense. So I tapped out on religion far as like, I believed in God, but I was not gonna sit there and act like they were making sense when they wasn't. So I just told myself, when it makes sense, when I can figure out whatever way it makes sense, then I'll get back into religion or whatever you call believing, there's a system to things. Can I believe that God wants, why wouldn't he want it to make sense if he putting such a high stakes on it? It should make sense. If you got eternity to damn deal with something, then it should make sense. And why wouldn't that being that's in control, So when I was in around the same time, I was 11, when 12 or whatever, when I realized, okay, in science, that the activity on the subatomic level was so major in our expression, our existence, then okay, whatever is God has to be on that level. All the intelligence has to be on that level. The presence has to be on that level. The power has to be on that level. So if you want to point to a place where God exists, it has to be in the place where it can have an effect on everything to be termed God. Like, that's the place where you have to have the effect of Godship. If you're gonna, you're gonna create from that spot, you got to be everywhere. You got to know everything, and you got to be infinite, because no other being can challenge you for you to be God. There can only be one, in my estimation. So that's where, I come into my interest in metaphysics and philosophy. I come in at, okay, what's the base level? That's the base level. So that this podcast is supposed to be about this, but this importance of what God is and its aspects was taught by Troward to mean whatever God is in spirit, it keeps and carries that aspect throughout all of its being. So this means man has to have, in some way, the connection to all of what its maker embodies. Because Troward teaches that God cannot be separated from any aspect of its being. I mean, God cannot be separated from its power, its omniscience, its omnipresence. and its intelligence. So that means everything that it makes out of itself has all of those aspects in it. And because God is consciousness, thought, that means everything that thinks, like humans, has access to the consciousness inherited through being made of consciousness. So our access to consciousness is through that which makes us, which is consciousness. And since consciousness is what creates, because everything has to be thought of before it becomes expressed in reality, this means we think through God and create through God. As God makes us out of itself, it expresses us as itself, and it's a like my grandma used to say, it's a wheel inside of a wheel. We think through God, and God makes it happen. Basically, our consciousness is the consciousness that creates. And this is very important to human existence, because now we can look at life scientifically and say, my thoughts are creative. I can only act on what I think. So my thoughts are creative, meaning my life is a product of how I think. So that's the main thing I was trying to say through all this. So I guess it's got to be a part two. But I had to get this out. And I want to thank everybody who took the time to pay attention to what I'm saying. And once again, come to the site. I'm going to put the podcast up. Tell me what you think. And we can discuss it. Like I want to discuss it with people who have like minds, who think about stuff like this. So thanks again. And until I make a new one, y'all understand that the only way to get right is to think right. Once again, Bali Bala event, and I'm out.